I like to quote David Allan Coe, boy, can you make folks feel what you feel inside.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the Louisiana Now podcast. I am your host, Todd Rossnagel. It is great to have you along with us. That voice off the top of this episode, the photographer Mike DuBose with the United Methodist News Service. Mike and Kathy Gilbert, a reporter with the news service, were recently in Louisiana covering stories about Hurricane Laura. They were here for several days, including a Saturday where Methodists from all across the conference gathered for a workday. The United Methodist News Service is the official news gathering agency of the United Methodist Church. It is staffed by professionally trained journalists like Kathy and Mike, who are committed to the work and mission of the United Methodist Church. They cover the news of the global church with objectivity, and they strive to be inclusive of the voices, views, and contexts of the denomination. They also cover disaster zones, because they know, as much as you know, wherever a disaster strikes, you will find United Methodist churches responding out of God's love for those on the margins. In our conversation in this episode, we're going to talk about how Kathy writes a story from a faith perspective. Some great insight on this. I also ask Mike DuBose how to find and capture a compelling photograph. He also shares his tips on taking a good photograph. Our interview was recorded in the field on a weekend when volunteers from across the denomination were spread out all over southwest Louisiana. And that's where we begin this episode, with the volunteers. Specifically, those who volunteered on a workday we most recently held in DeRidder, a community just north of Lake Charles. One of those volunteers, Zach.
I'm Zach Henderson.
Zach is a student at LSU and a leader at the Wesley Foundation. He and 5 other students woke up around 4 o'clock on a Saturday morning to drive several hours to DeRidder and volunteer.
I felt the call to. It devastates my heart to see so many people affected by a natural disaster. And if my body is able to do so, then I am more than happy to help in any way that I can.
You could be doing other things.
I could be doing other things, but it warms my heart to know that there are fellow peers that want to do the same work that I want to do. This is a remarkable group of people. I spend most of my time with them in fellowship, in small group, or just in life in general, and they are willing people. They are just as much, if not more, than willing to do stuff than me. So I'm very grateful to be their peer and have them as my friends.
The Wesley Foundation's director at LSU is Susie Rivera, and she was with the students.
So we had 7 students from the very beginning, the moment we knew Hurricane Laura was going to hit, have a heart to want to come out and serve this community. And so when we had this opportunity to come up today, they gave up their Sunday or their Saturday. They took the time off of doing schoolwork or hanging out, relaxing to come and serve this community because they just have a heart of Christ and they have a servant's heart. And that's one of our big foundations at the Wesley Foundation is to serve not only the Baton Rouge community, but our Louisiana community and the world.
You mentioned that it's a Saturday and they could be doing other things, right? I mean, this really is the epitome of service.
Yes. I am always amazed how willing my students are to give up their free time to come out and to serve, to do hard labor as moving trees or whatever it is. They continue to impress me, and it just shows that they are disciples of Jesus Christ. They want to be Jesus' hands and feet in the world.
They were indeed moving trees, lots of downed trees, specifically downed trees from the backyard of Miss Catherine, who can't get around as easily as college kids.
I'm 91.
Miss Catherine was born at this house, and she's lived here her entire life.
I can remember when they had mules and they raised all kind of stuff. We had cows and sheep.
What is it like to see all these young people picking up debris in your back? You don't even know who these people are.
I don't, and they're just all smiles. They're enjoying what they're doing. I just can't believe everything was a mess. And I lost a lot of trees. And everybody has just pitched in and helped. And all I had to do was ask, and they were right here.
I was visiting with Miss Catherine, the 91-year-old who lives, this is her property. And when I asked her what this was like, what does this say about the kingdom of God, Catherine?
Jewels in your crown.
Jewels in your crown?
Yes, yes.
She said, she described it as jewels in their crown.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And I think it's so true.
The Lord is good, yes.
How are you doing through all this, Catherine?
I'm doing good. I'm doing really good. Yes. I mean, what can you ask for? And it's all here by the grace of God.
Thank you for visiting with me.
Welcome. Thank you for asking.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, our interview with Kathy Gilbert and Mike DuBose with the United Methodist News Service. But first, a word from our sponsor, the United Methodist Foundation of Louisiana. Your United Methodist Foundation stands ready to support the United Methodist Churches of the Louisiana Conference. They've been there through storms of the past, and they're here now for churches that need help. Hurricane Laura was one of the strongest hurricanes on record to ever strike Louisiana. If your church was in its path, you're buying supplies, paying for repairs, and meeting insurance deductibles. It's probably got your church budget cash strapped. Let the foundation help with a no-to-low interest deposit secured loan. No interest for the first 90 days, only 2% interest for 12 months after. The foundation is here to help, and that help is just a phone call away to some friendly folks who know your situation better than anyone. Visit their website today for more information, umf.org. Welcome back to the Louisiana Now podcast, everyone. I'm your host, Todd Rossnagel. Before the break, you heard from some of the many volunteers who were out on a Saturday giving up their free time to clear debris in the hurricane zone. There to document the workday and many other stories in Louisiana were two members of the United Methodist News Service, Kathy Gilbert, a reporter, and Mike DuBose, a photographer. They were kind to pause in the midst of their tour and speak with me. Their tour, by the way, took them from DeRidder all the way to the coast. In fact, you'll almost feel the winds during our interview as the extreme outer bands of Tropical Storm Beta started hitting the southern coast while we were recording in Grand Chenier. Now, this isn't the first time Kathy and Mike have been in Louisiana for a disaster. They were in Baton Rouge back in 2016, documenting the Great Flood. They were here during Hurricane Katrina. In fact, they document stories on behalf of the denomination all over the world. Floods and hurricanes can start to look the same, but if you dig deep enough, you quickly realize that each storm, each disaster, is unique in every sense of the word.
The one thing that I could say about all of them, it's like it's almost more than your eyes can see. You just can't hold it in. You can't take the enormity of it in. But they are all different.
When you go to write a story, when you try to find a story, what are you looking for?
I'm looking for something that breaks my heart. You know, something that I know if somebody hears it, they can't just turn away from it, that they'll want to do something to help.
You have extensive history of writing for secular newspapers, if you will, and now writing for the United Methodist News. What is it like to write stories from a journalist's perspective and now through the eyes of the church?
It's very different. It's much more meaningful. It's much more emotional. It's much more get your spirit involved in it. I don't think I could go back to the secular reporting because I wouldn't get to say the things that I get to say. It wouldn't matter to them the things that matter to us.
In, I guess, secular journalism, there's the what, the where, the when. In your reporting, there's a lot of why. Exactly.
And there's a lot of learning yourself. There's a lot of stretching your own spirit, stretching your own soul. And, I just get to put in things that would never fit into a regular news story.
United Methodist News has, I guess you could say, beat reporters that cover certain aspects of the church in some ways. You came to Louisiana in 2016 after the floods, and you're back again. Is it safe to describe you as a disaster beat reporter for the United Methodist News? I know you write a lot of things.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of more the disaster reporter than anybody else, but it started way back. I don't even know when, but we were here for Katrina and we went to Texas for Harvey, and we went to Haiti for the earthquake. There's just shards in my heart for a lot of those places.
Along with Kathy is the photographer Mike DuBose. Now, to describe Mike as just a photographer would be insufficient. Mike is a storyteller. His storytelling tools happen to be a set of cameras. Now, Mike has great photography skills, the ability to get in position for the right shot at the right time, frame and compose beautiful images. But when you look at Mike's photographs, they speak on a very deep level. You can not only see the moment, you can see the church in the moment. It's a special skill set, even in the midst of a disaster.
Well, it's hard in many ways to put on my photographer hat and know that the things that make good pictures are hurtful for people. So sometimes I have to just set that aside and make the pictures that I know will touch people's hearts in the way that Kathy's talking about with the words. I like to quote David Allen Coe, "Boy, can you make folks feel what you feel inside."
When you arrive at a scene, like what we're standing here right now, what are some things that run through your mind photographically? The old adage, wide, medium, tight. Take a wide shot, a medium shot, and take something that fills the frame. What else runs through your mind?
Well, there are all kind of technical dragons to slay and compositional concerns, but the main thing is to just take a breath and see what there is to see. I am always a little concerned that our access may be denied. Somebody may pull up and say, "You can't be here." So I try to balance those two things, get something in the bag, and then kind of walk around and look a little more carefully and thoughtfully, and just think a minute about what I'm seeing and how to help others see that. It's all about trying to evoke a feeling rather than a record shot of what it looks like. I need to have some sense of what it feels like, and that, I think, is the difference between somebody with a photographer's eye and a good-hearted person who shares a photograph that they made on their iPhone. It's not simply meant to be a record. It's meant to evoke some feeling.
You mentioned an iPhone. Everybody has a camera now. I get asked this question all the time. How do you take better pictures, right? How do you take a better photograph? For the folks at home who may be listening to this and wondering, aside from buying thousands of dollars worth of equipment, what are some tips for taking better photographs, most especially in the faith world?
The most important thing to me, I think you could do is have real people doing real things and not having them pose with their hands on their hips or in a selfie or weefy pose where they stop what they're doing and pose for the camera. The other piece of advice I would have is just to move closer.
I've often said you have to have the why behind the photograph. Why is this action taking place? And if the viewer can see why something is happening, then that photograph begins to preach.
That's true, and so if you can get that deeper meaning worked in there, and for me, normally that involves having a person in the photograph. It's very hard to make a telling photograph without a person in it, at least from my own perspective. So having the why often goes with the who.
I mentioned that we were recording in Grand Chenier. We were actually recording at what used to be Grand Chenier United Methodist Church, located 530 feet from the Gulf of Mexico. The eastern eye wall passed directly over Grand Chenier and completely destroyed the church.
We had some struggle finding where the church was because the devastation is so complete.
Kathy, as you look around and see this devastation, how bad is it?
It's the worst it could be. I mean, there's nothing left. There's no memories to pick up from here. Just, I don't know, it takes a long time to overcome something like this.
The damage is horrifying, and it's worse to know that this is somebody's faith home. This is where somebody was baptized. It's where somebody got married. It's where they were confirmed. This is a faith home.
Mike DuBose, photographer, United Methodist News. Thank you very much for carving time out of a busy day and a busy tour of Louisiana to speak with us.
Thank you for having us.
Mike's photographs and Kathy's words will be published by the United Methodist News Service very soon. We will include a link to UMNS in the show notes. Also in the show notes, we will include photographs of where we were. Sometimes you need to see the power of a storm to know just how intense the recovery will be. If you would like to help us in Louisiana, please consider giving financially. Your gifts can be spread so far and so wide. They can help support volunteers like the students at LSU's Wesley Foundation. Your gifts can help other Miss Catherines who don't have the energy to clean up. Thank you for listening to today's podcast. If you enjoyed it, please consider sharing it with a friend and sharing it on your social media channels. For our producer, Mary Burley, our sponsor, the United Methodist Foundation of Louisiana, I am your host, Todd Rossnagel. Thanks so much for joining us, and take time today to notice your
jewels in your crown.